excited to bring you a video this week that I've been waiting a long time to do, and I feel it's vital for you to kind of understand where I am coming from when I bring out pictures and I have words on there, and they speak to a certain wisdom and knowingness that we have, but I feel they're misunderstood. So this is a clarification on my part as to why and how they come about. So I've had people ask me things like, how do you come up with this stuff, or where do these words come from? So I'm going to be blatantly honest with this. I don't come up with anything. I don't reach into a certain part of my brain to figure out what I have to say. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And when I find that I'm receiving these messages and I cognitively try to complete them, that's when I actually have to step back, because I've realized over time in receiving them that those messages, if I were to allow them to complete themselves, they would be from me, not through me. So I don't come up with anything, and I've realized that thinking creates a disconnect between the greater intelligence that is allowing me to bring these out. And I'm not saying that I'm the only one that can do it, or that you wouldn't be able to reach into this as well. I believe this is a universal intelligence. However, I think it's also a form of art in itself, because it doesn't have to be conveyed through words, because frankly, that's one of the more limiting ways in which we can receive the knowingness. And so I very much remove the I in this process, and that's why I like to remain objective when I comment on them. And I couldn't have created this cognitively even if I tried. And I'm going to really emphasize this because my background in chemical engineering and hydrogeology is a very scientific based approach to everything. And I may have shifted drastically from writing pages of equations to solve a problem to memorizing a lot of definitions to allow myself to be acquainted with an environmental system that I am trying to analyze or really get a good grasp on. So the terminology that I use when I'm writing an academic paper or a thesis is going to be vastly different from what I am bringing through me with these revelations. So when I first started receiving them, there was no sort of single event or situation that instigated them. It really just came out of nowhere. And so I've introduced this with some phrases that I feel creates a good basis as to how you can understand the ways in which that I get in touch with this intelligence, and I believe that you can as well. And one of them is that it is reproducible, but it's also spontaneous. So what I mean by that, even though they're very contradictory in how they sound with words, but we know how deceiving words can be, is that I can recreate a situation in which my perception is open enough to receive something infinite besides the fact that I am a finite I that is receiving this. But it is spontaneous. I can get a message once a day. I've had one time I had it up to 4 times a day. It really just depends, because if I'm going through a day and I'm rushing around, I'm going to train, doing therapy, working on assignments, writing my thesis, studying everything, and I don't open up that space, which is a very important part of it, then there's a very high likelihood that I'm not going to receive those messages. And so I feel that also they are not only for me, they're for everyone. That's why I wouldn't just receive them and then keep them to myself. I really don't see a benefit to having a library of these things and keeping them to myself. So I receive them out of necessity. I get any particular message on a certain day, and that's the one that I need. And that's where coming into necessity is really important, because I receive what I need, but not necessarily what I want. And whatever it is exactly what I need to hear at that time. And I've had people tell me when they see it, that's what they needed to hear too. which leads me to reaffirm my belief that it is from a greater intelligence that is accessible to everyone. And so one way in which I'd like you to explore this, if you're interested, is to free space up. Now, I'm a little bit hesitant to use the word space because we know it's an illusion, but I feel it's a good analogy for how I'm able to get in touch with it. We're not creating space, it's like creating time. Because when someone tells me to make time for something, I hate it because I wish I had more time to do everything that I do. And so I believe it's a matter of freeing space. What is that from? And it's related directly to consciousness, I believe. So that means freeing yourself from the subconscious programs, anxiety, stress, those things, because even though the intelligence that is allowing me to get in touch with this information is so great, it's unbelievable how much of an ability we have to override that in everyday life when we're so stuck into the subconscious programs and with our emotions and feelings. They're great, but man, they really set up barriers for how we can receive. So I'm going to invite you to create a space for yourself where you can really clear away any of that excess baggage. And so in a way, it's similar to filling up a cup that's already full, and you are just maybe removing some things from that cup where they're really not going to benefit you in any meaningful manner, especially and most importantly in receiving this. But when we have our awareness and we're in the infinite, well, that's when I give you a bigger cup. I give you a mug or a jug. You have a lot more space for yourself to fill it up. So lastly, I just kind of wanted to mention that it's not about coming up with anything. For me, I'm still learning from this process, and I'm always receiving, provided I open the space for it. And so I believe that since we are all energetically connected through entanglement and just our oneness, that anyone is able to do this. So I just want to reiterate that I'm not thinking these things up. I'm very analytical, but despite the terminology I use and the professional fields I'm involved in, the main one, it's not something that I could just sit down and construct. And I've noticed, most importantly, if you do decide to go through with this, is that you really have to step out of the way. Because as soon as you start trying to complete sentences, bring what you want into this, or really just allow your subconscious to tell you what you want to hear, then it's coming from you and not through you. And I feel that we get enough coming from us, the majority of us every day, that it isn't what we need to really embrace the greater intelligence and energetic relationships that we share. So I hope this cleared up some things for all of you. I really wanted to do this because I felt that the messages were misunderstood in that manner. But I also want to reiterate that anyone, I believe, can get in touch with this. So if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave them in the comments section below, and I'd love to hear from you.